Ambassador Veltara floated in her private chambers aboard the diplomatic vessel *Harmony's Edge *, studying the holographic galactic map that hovered before her. The display showed the familiar spiral arms of their galaxy, with bright blue lines marking trade routes and golden borders outlining territorial boundaries. Everything looked normal, except for one thing that made her feel uneasy. There was a blank space where human territory should be. She moved her long, thin fingers through the empty area on the map. A simple message appeared: Human Territory Survey Restricted. This was strange. She had seen maps from 17 different species across the galaxy, and they all had the same mysterious gap. It was not marked as unexplored space or dangerous territory. It was just missing. Computer, show me historical survey data for Sector 7 Alpha through 12 Gamma, Veltara said. Data restricted. Authorization required from Galactic Council. The computer replied. Her mandibles clicked together, making a sound like snapping twigs. As a senior ambassador, she should have clearance to see this information. This was very unusual. She left her quarters and walked through the ship's corridors to the cartography bay, where Chief Navigator Brixtow was working on star charts. Brixtow was from the hegemony species, with 4 large eyes and a friendly personality. He usually loved to talk about stellar navigation and share stories about distant worlds. But when Veltara approached him, his behavior changed completely. Brixtow, I need information about the human territories. Why are they not shown on our maps? She asked. The normally talkative officer's 4 eyes grew dim, like lights being turned off. His voice became cold and distant. Some boundaries are better left alone. Ambassador, the Council's orders are very clear. No survey missions, no trade route expansions, no curiosity. Veltara was surprised by his tone. She had never seen Brixtow act this way before. But surely as diplomats, we should understand. No, Brixtow cut her off. His voice carried a finality that made Veltara's skin crawl. There are things in this galaxy that require respect through distance. The humans are one of them. She stared at him for a moment, trying to understand what had just happened. This was the same Brixtow who would spend hours explaining the beauty of nebula formations and the elegance of gravity wells. Now he refused to even discuss a simple question about territorial boundaries. Veltara returned to her quarters, her mind racing with questions. She could not shake the feeling that the entire galaxy was hiding something about humanity. For 3 centuries, her people had maintained official diplomatic contact with humans. But as she thought about it more carefully, she realized something disturbing. No exploration vessel had crossed into human space in living memory. No trade convoy had established regular routes there. No diplomatic mission had visited human worlds or cultural exchanges. For a species that was supposedly part of galactic civilization, humans were remarkably absent from it. She activated a personal terminal and began searching through diplomatic records. The file showed regular communications with human representatives, but always at neutral meeting points or aboard space stations in border regions. She found trade agreements, but the goods always came through intermediary worlds. There were cultural exchange programs, but they involved humans visiting other worlds, never the reverse. It was as if humanity existed behind an invisible wall that everyone agreed to respect, but no one was willing to discuss. Veltara pulled up the communication logs from the last human diplomatic meeting. The human ambassador had been polite, knowledgeable, and surprisingly well-informed about galactic politics. But when other ambassadors had suggested visiting Earth or other human colonies, the human representative had simply smiled and said, perhaps in the future, when conditions are more favorable. That had been 50 years ago. The same response had been given for 3 centuries. She tried accessing military records, thinking that perhaps security concerns explained the restrictions. The files she could access mentioned something called the Kithra Incident, but provided no details. Every reference to this event was marked with the highest classification levels. As she dug deeper into the archives, a pattern emerged. Every species in the galaxy seemed to have quietly, simultaneously agreed to treat human space as forbidden territory. There was no formal treaty in the public records, no negotiated agreement, no official declaration. It was as if the entire galactic community had simply decided, without discussion, that humans were to be left alone. But why would an advanced galactic civilization collectively decide to isolate one of its member species? And why did everyone, from chatty navigators to senior diplomats, react with such fear when the subject was raised? Veltara realized that her investigation had only just begun. Somewhere in the galaxy's history lay answers to questions that no one seemed willing to ask. The blank space on the galactic map was not just a cartographic anomaly. It was a deliberate omission that hid something the entire galaxy was afraid to acknowledge. She made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find out what really happened to make humanity so feared that even mentioning them properly was forbidden. The truth was out there, somewhere in the restricted archives and classified reports. And Ambassador Veltara was determined to uncover it, no matter what the cost of. Veltara's search for answers brought her to the most ancient archive in known space. The massive station orbited Kelthra Prime, a world so old that its 3 suns had changed color twice in recorded history. The archive facility was enormous, with crystalline storage towers that stretched for kilometers in all directions. Inside these towers lay the complete historical records of galactic civilization, dating back thousands of years. She requested access to the restricted sections, knowing that her diplomatic credentials might not be enough. The station's chief archivist was Thekmora, an ancient being whose species showed age not through wrinkles or gray hair, but through changing skin colors. Thekmora's hide had shifted from bright blue to deep purple over his many centuries of life. Ambassador Veltara, Thekmora said, his voice like rustling leaves. You wish to access records about humanity. I must warn you, what you seek may disturb you greatly. The early human records are classified for very good reasons. Despite his warning, Thekmora granted her access to the restricted database. Veltara entered a private viewing chamber where holographic displays could show her the most sensitive historical documents. She began with the earliest records of human contact. The files from 3 centuries ago painted a completely different picture of humanity than she expected. The first diplomatic meetings showed humans as a perfectly normal species. They walked on 2 legs, had basic faster-than-light travel technology, and seemed genuinely excited about joining the galactic community. Their representatives were polite, asked intelligent questions, and appeared eager to establish trade relationships and cultural exchanges. Human ambassadors attended galactic conferences, human merchants began small trading operations, and human students enrolled in interspecies educational programs. For about 50 years, humanity seemed like just another emerging civilization finding its place among the stars. Then Veltara discovered references to something that made her blood run cold, the Kithera incident. The Kithera Dominion had been the most feared military power in the galaxy at that time. They controlled hundreds of worlds through pure force, demanding tribute from weaker civilizations and destroying those who refused to submit. Their massive fleets would appear above a world, demand complete surrender, and crush any resistance with overwhelming firepower. When the Kithera encountered human colonies in the Outer Rim territories, they did exactly what they had done to dozens of other species. They sent their largest battle fleet to demonstrate their power and force humanity to pay tribute to the Dominion. Veltara found Admiral Kephar's final transmission, sent exactly 307 years ago. His message was full of confidence and arrogance. 12,000 vessels advancing on human positions. These primitive humans will learn the cost of defying the mighty Dominion. Victory is inevitable. Their pathetic colonies will fall within hours. The transmission log showed that Kephar's message was received by Dominion command centers across the galaxy. Military leaders prepared victory celebrations. Tribute collection ships moved into position. The Dominion expected complete human surrender within days. But the next entry in the official records was filed 6 months later, and it told a very different story. Search and rescue operations have been terminated. No wreckage has been located. No survivors have been found. All 12,000 vessels of Battle Fleet Omega remain completely unaccounted for. Command recommends immediate reclassification of human space as prohibited territory. Veltara stared at the records in shock. 12,000 ships, an entire armada that had conquered dozens of worlds, had simply vanished. Not destroyed, not captured, not defeated in battle. They had disappeared without leaving any trace whatsoever. She searched desperately for more information about what happened during those 6 months. Military reports, sensor logs, communication intercepts, anything that might explain how an entire fleet could vanish. But between Admiral Kethvar's confident final message and the search and rescue termination report, there was nothing. Complete silence. The most disturbing part was not the disappearance itself, but what happened afterward. Within a year of the incident, every major species in the galaxy had quietly agreed to avoid human space. There was no formal treaty negotiated, no official diplomatic agreement signed, no public declaration made. It was as if the entire galactic community had simultaneously decided, without any discussion, that humans were to be left completely alone. Veltara found memos from dozens of different governments, all containing similar language, recommend suspension of all activities in human-controlled sectors. Advise immediate withdrawal of survey mission from human territory. Suggest rerouting of trade convoys around human space. The fear was so complete and universal that it seemed to spread like a virus through galactic civilization. Species that had never even heard of the Kithra incident began implementing policies to avoid human contact. Cartographers removed human space from their maps. Trade organizations canceled planned routes. Even scientific expeditions changed course to avoid human systems. What made an entire galaxy so terrified that they would collectively pretend humanity did not exist? What had happened to 12,000 warships that not even wreckage remained? And why did every civilization seem to understand, without being told, that humans were not to be disturbed? Veltara realized she was looking at evidence of something beyond normal military defeat. This was something that had shaken galactic civilization so deeply that the truth itself had become too dangerous to record. The cantina on Freehaven Station was the kind of place where people came to disappear. Located in the dangerous space between civilized worlds and the lawless Outer Rim, it attracted refugees, smugglers, and anyone who wanted to stay hidden. The air was thick with smoke from a dozen different worlds, and the lights were kept deliberately dim so faces could not be seen clearly. Veltara had spent weeks following whispered rumors and half-forgotten stories before she finally tracked down her target. In the darkest corner of the cantina sat a figure she had been searching for, Korath, supposedly the only living being who had survived the Kithra incident. The veteran looked nothing like the proud Kithra warrior she had seen in historical records. His natural shell, which should have glowed with healthy bioluminescence, was covered in ugly scars. The light patterns that once marked him as a member of the elite military forces had faded to sickly yellow patches. His hands shook constantly, and his eyes darted nervously around the room as if expecting attack at any moment. "You want to know about the humans." Carther's voice sounded like broken glass. It was the voice of someone who had screamed until his throat was permanently damaged. "Everyone wants to forget what happened. I have tried to forget for 3 centuries. 300 years of trying to erase those memories." Veltara slid a credit chip across the stained table. She had brought enough money to buy his story, hoping that credits might loosen his tongue where diplomatic pressure had failed. Korath picked up the chip and examined it with shaking fingers. Then he began to speak, his words coming slowly at first, as if each sentence caused him physical pain. "We thought they were easy prey," he said, letting out a laugh that contained no joy whatsoever. 12,000 ships in our battle fleet against a handful of human colonies. The Dominion had conquered species with much better technology and much larger fleets. These humans seemed so simple, so harmless. Their colonies looked like farming settlements, and their ships looked like basic cargo haulers. He stopped talking to drink from a glass filled with something that glowed blue. His hands shook so badly that some of the liquid spilled onto the table. "The first human colony we approached did not run away. They did not call for help or try to evacuate. Instead, a single representative came aboard Admiral Kethvar's flagship. She was a young human female, maybe 20 years old by their counting. She told us her name was Jin." Koratha's bioluminescent patches flickered in patterns that Veltara recognized as extreme distress in his species. This Jin spoke our language perfectly. She knew our customs, our military procedures, everything about how the Dominion operated. When Admiral Kethvar demanded tribute from her people, she actually smiled. She looked completely calm and said, "I think there has been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should discuss this with someone more appropriate." The veteran's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That is when everything changed. The colony below our fleet, it was not really a colony at all. The buildings folded away like paper being unfolded, revealing weapon platforms that should not have been possible to build. Our best sensors could not track them properly. They seemed to exist in several different dimensions at the same time. Veltara leaned forward, hardly believing what she was hearing. The human ships did not fight us in any normal way, Korath continued. They took us apart, piece by piece, molecule by molecule. I watched our largest dreadnought get dismantled like it was a training exercise for engineering students. But they were careful. The crew was not hurt, just put to sleep and placed in life support pods that worked perfectly. His hands began shaking even more violently. I was stationed on a small scout ship at the very edge of our formation. From there, I could see everything that happened to our main fleet. Ship after ship simply came apart, but not from explosions or weapons fire. It was like watching invisible hands carefully take apart complex machines. Then Jin's voice came over all our communication channels at once. She spoke directly to every ship in the fleet, somehow bypassing all our security systems. She said, "One survivor will return to carry this message. There are guardians in the darkness, and they have been patient long enough." Korath met Veltara's eyes for the first time during their conversation. His gaze held a fear so deep that it made her feel cold. They let me live, Ambassador, not because they felt sorry for me, but because they needed someone to survive. Someone had to return to the galaxy and warn everyone that humanity was not what they seemed to be. I was chosen to be that messenger, to carry the terror back to our people. He finished his glowing drink and stood up slowly, his movements careful and pained. The humans wanted everyone to know that they were watching, that they were far more powerful than anyone imagined, and that they had been choosing to appear weak. The Kithera incident was not a battle, it was a demonstration. A warning to the entire galaxy about what would happen if anyone pushed too hard. As Korath walked away into the cantina's shadows, Veltara sat alone at the table, finally understanding why the galaxy's maps ended at human space. Armed with Korath's shocking testimony, Veltara knew she had to take a discovery to the highest levels of galactic government. She demanded an emergency meeting with the Galactic Council's inner circle, the 12 most powerful representatives from the founding species who had created galactic civilization thousands of years ago. The meeting took place in the most secure chamber on the council station, deep within its armored core. The room was shielded from all outside monitoring, and only the most important secrets of galactic civilization were discussed here. When Veltara entered, she found herself facing beings so ancient and powerful that some had witnessed the rise and fall of entire stellar empires. Chancellor Mordain of the Ancient Assembly was the first to speak. His body was made of living crystal that pulsed with different colors depending on his mood. Right now, those colors were dark and serious. Ambassador Veltara, you have been investigating matters that were sealed by unanimous agreement of this council. Tell us why you have chosen to disturb secrets that were meant to stay buried. Veltara stood straight and spoke with conviction. Because the galaxy deserves to know the truth. We have spent 3 centuries living in fear of a species we barely understand. Our people have a right to know what really happened. Counselor H. Tarax, whose species resembled a giant octopus with dozens of writhing tentacles, made a sound of disbelief. Fear? Is that what you think our policy toward humanity is based on? Simple fear. Chancellor Mordain raised one crystal hand for silence. Then he activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. But this was not like any galactic map Veltara had ever seen before. Instead of the clean, simple charts used for public display, this map showed the galaxy in incredible detail, with layers upon layers of information. Energy signatures flowed between star systems in patterns that defied understanding. Dimensional anomalies were marked in purple, showing places where space itself behaved strangely. Temporal distortions appeared as yellow zones where time moved differently than normal. And throughout it all, connecting distant regions of space, were structures that should not have been possible to build. Look carefully, Ambassador, Chancellor Mordain said. These are the real maps, the ones we use for actual governance of galactic civilization. Veltara stared in amazement. Human space was not empty or restricted at all. It was enormous, covering regions she had never imagined existed. Vast networks of what looked like artificial constructions connected star systems across distances that should have taken years to travel. Energy readings from human territory showed technology so advanced that it made the Council's most sophisticated civilizations look like children playing with simple tools. Humanity made contact with us 3 centuries ago. Chancellor Mordain continued, his crystal body now glowing with soft blue light. But they did not approach us as a new species seeking guidance or wanting to join our community. They came to evaluate us. They wanted to determine whether our civilizations had grown mature enough to know about their true existence. Councillor Velnoro, whose species was known for their beautiful singing voices, spoke next. But her usually musical tones sounded heavy with old memories. The Kithera incident was not an accident or a military defeat. It was a carefully planned test. Humanity needed to understand how the galaxy would react when faced with absolute power that was used with perfect restraint. Veltara felt her understanding of reality shifting beneath her feet. What do you mean it was a test? The Dominion's fleet was not destroyed, Velnora explained. The 12,000 ships and all their crews were relocated to what humans call a quarantine dimension. It is a place that exists parallel to our own reality. The Kithera crews are alive and comfortable there, living in a perfectly maintained simulation where they believe they are still conquering worlds and expanding their empire. The truth hit Veltara like a physical blow. You are saying that humans are our supervisors, that they have been watching us and controlling us. Not supervisors, Chancellor Mordain corrected gently. Guardians. The spiral arm of our galaxy is home to 17 different developing civilizations, including our own. Humanity's role is to make sure we can develop naturally without interference from external threats, while also preventing any of us from becoming threats to others. Councillor H.E.T.Rax's tentacles moved in patterns that indicated deep thought. The blank spaces on our public maps are not there because we fear humanity. They exist because of an agreement we made with them. Humanity maintains cosmic stability and protects us from dangers we do not even know about. In return, we must prove that we can govern ourselves responsibly and peacefully. The Kithera Dominion proved that our galaxy was not yet ready for full knowledge, added Chancellor Mordain. They showed that given enough power, one of our civilizations would try to dominate all the others. Humanity had to intervene to prevent a galactic war that could have destroyed billions of lives. Veltara sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was learning. For 3 centuries, she and everyone else had believed humanity was just another species trying to find its place in galactic civilization. Instead, they had been the secret guardians keeping that civilization safe and stable. The galaxy was not what she had thought it was, and humanity was far more than anyone had dared to imagine. 6 months had passed since Veltara first noticed a blank space on the galactic maps. Now she stood in the Galactic Council's Grand Assembly Hall, surrounded by representatives from 17 different species. The massive chamber was filled with the usual sounds of diplomatic discussions when suddenly loud alarms began ringing throughout the entire station. Emergency lights flashed red as voices over the communication system announced that long-range sensors had detected something unprecedented. Human ships were approaching the Council Station for the first time in 3 centuries. The assembly hall fell completely silent. Every representative, from every species, turned to look at the main display screens. What they saw defied all understanding of physics and engineering. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. The ships seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, their hulls constantly shifting between solid metal and pure energy. They moved through space with impossible grace, like dancers performing a perfectly choreographed routine. Within minutes, they had arranged themselves in perfect formation around the Council Station without triggering a single defensive system or security alert. It was as if the station's most advanced military technology simply could not detect them properly. A single transmission came through all communication channels at once. This is Commander Park Minute-Ho of the Human Exploration Initiative. We respectfully request permission to address the Galactic Council. The voice was calm, polite, and spoke in perfect galactic standard language. But what shocked everyone was not the message itself, but the fact that it had somehow bypassed every security protocol and reached them directly. Within just a few hours, something even more impossible happened. 3 humans simply materialized in the center of the assembly hall. They had not been transported by any technology the Council recognized. They had not walked through doors or arrived in shuttles. They simply appeared, as if they had always been standing there and everyone had just failed to notice them before. The three humans wore simple but elegant uniforms that seemed to be made from materials that shifted color slightly as they moved. They stood calmly before the gathered representatives of 17 species, showing no sign of nervousness or concern. Commander Park was a tall man with kind eyes that somehow seemed much older than his face suggested. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made everyone in the hall listen carefully. "Honored counselors," he began, "we must apologize for the deception we have maintained for so long. But evaluation periods require that developing species behave authentically without knowing they are being observed. Your civilizations have now demonstrated sufficient maturity for full disclosure of the truth." Dr. Lee So-young, a woman whose mere presence seemed to make the entire room feel more peaceful, activated a small device she carried. Immediately, all the display screens in the assembly hall changed. The familiar galactic maps that everyone knew dissolved away, replaced by something far more complex and extensive. Humanity serves as regional guardians for this sector of the galaxy, Dr. Lee explained in a gentle voice. We monitor the development of emerging civilizations, protect them from external threats that they are not yet ready to face, and intervene only when absolutely necessary to maintain cosmic stability. The third human, Engineer Kim Taijin, gestured toward the expanding display on the screens. The Kithara incident 3 centuries ago was not punishment for their aggression. It was prevention. Their civilization was approaching a technological threshold that would have made them an existential threat to neighboring star systems. They now live peacefully in a carefully maintained alternate reality where they believe they successfully achieved all their conquest goals. Commander Park smiled, and several of the older council members recognized it as the same calm, confident smile that had appeared in the historical records from centuries ago. We have been waiting patiently for your civilizations to reach this moment of readiness. The real question has never been why the galactic maps ended at human space. The question is whether you are prepared to see how far human space actually extends. The display screen zoomed out, showing a view of the galaxy that no one in the assembly had ever imagined. Humanity's influence stretched across thousands of sectors, far beyond anything that appeared on any official map. Protective barriers surrounded developing species that the Council had never even known existed. Advanced monitoring systems tracked cosmic threats that would have destroyed entire civilizations before anyone knew they were coming. "Welcome," Commander Park said, spreading his arms in a gesture that encompassed the entire transformed view of a galaxy to the real universe. "We have much to discuss, and there is much work ahead for all of us." As Veltara watched her entire understanding of existence change before her eyes, she realized something profound. The greatest mystery had never been why the maps ended at human space. The real mystery was how humanity had managed to keep the truth hidden for so long, protecting and guiding galactic civilization without anyone realizing what was happening. And if humans were the guardians of this galactic sector, what other guardians might be watching over civilizations in distant parts of the universe? How many layers of protection and guidance existed that no one had ever suspected? The galaxy was far larger, far more complex, and far more carefully managed than anyone had ever dreamed.